All right, now what I want to do is talk about some of the more famous alien UFO phenomena that have been going in popular mainstream for a while. One of the most famous ones was in Roswell, New Mexico. So back in the 50s, in fact, I think you can see the date here. Oh, you can't really read it. But this was back in the 1950s. This is the Roswell, New Mexico. So what supposedly happened is this flying disc crashed there, and they called it the flying saucer on a ranch outside there. And then the military came in, took the materials away, and claimed it was a weather balloon. And ever since that day, there's people there that claimed it was aliens. There's all kinds of claims about things like dead bodies, dead alien bodies, and all kinds of stuff. And everything is kind of got confused over time. These are pictures that the military shows of the material they went to this ranch outside Roswell, New Mexico and brought back. This is exactly the kind of stuff that you get from what they were testing. They were testing these high altitude weather balloons. And they were looking at it, were they a possibility in the 1950s of using these super high altitude balloons to fly and to float around the earth, like to float over Russia and stuff. You can remember we were starting Cold War with cameras and things to deal with, but they used all kinds of bizarre aluminum foil and stuff. And so when it crashed, the people thought, oh, they hadn't seen this before, and that's what they thought it was. So the Air Force claims it was one of these. So there's a giant balloon that gets it up very high. We're talking 70, 80,000 feet high in the atmosphere, and it floats over, and then the instruments are down here, and the instruments would have been what crashed outside of Roswell, and that's what people claimed was aliens. There was also claims there were alien bodies and all that, but there was no actual evidence of it. Do we know anything more about it? Not at all. But if you drive through Roswell, New Mexico, they have all kinds of UFO restaurants, and you can go visit the UFO crash site, and the military has really said ever since then that it was just a weather balloon. That's all there is. Let it go, but people won't let it go. Area 51. This is a very special place outside in Nevada. This is a military base. It's pretty much the most secretive base, or it was the most secretive base in the U.S. The problem is it got so much press that I heard that they've moved to a new place where they haven't told anybody. But this was a secretive place because they used it to develop all new kinds of technology, especially like military fighter jet technology. You can see there's a landing strip and it's out there, and we think there's actually lots of underground buildings as well. Supposedly, to the UFO people, this is where they take all the alien bodies and all the alien spacecraft and everything that have fallen from the sky, and that's where they hide them and keep them. Now, no civilians are allowed in here. In fact, this is one of the few places where if you go inside here, they can shoot you if they want. And not only that, they could arrest you and hold you and never even charge you. Unlike everywhere else in the U.S. where you have a due process of law, this area 51, is beyond that. So be careful if you get anywhere close to there. These are monitors that they have around the whole area to look for people because the UFO enthusiasts all try to go there. And there was one point a few months ago, last summer, where a guy was trying to organize getting hundreds to thousands of people to all go and just rush it because they figured, well, they can't arrest us all. It didn't pan out at all. Nothing ever happened there. What they do in Area 51, we don't know. We do know that that's where they developed like the SR-51, 71, the bomber, which was very high, top secret. They also developed the B-2 bomber and the anti-radar technology. That was all done out at this Air Force base in Nevada because they didn't want the Russian satellites and the other satellites up there that are taking pictures to see what they're doing. That's why most of it was done at night. And it was done in these giant hangars because they didn't want the rest of the world to know what they were doing. And that's what the Air Force claims it is. Any claims about UFOs or anything, nobody has ever substantiated anything like that at this point. All right, crop circles. Yeah, crop circles started way back in the 70s. It became a big thing. It actually started over in England. And then it moved around and it came to the United States, and there were crop circles in the Midwest. And so what it is, farmers would plant their crops, and then they come out one day and they'd see these bizarre shapes in their crops where the crops were bent over in different patterns. Here's more of them. Some of the patterns got very elaborate. At first they were just circles and they became more and more elaborate. And everybody's, oh, it must be aliens, because if you can't explain it at first, then it always has to be aliens, especially to the people that think that way. It's like, oh, it has to be aliens, instead of thinking, oh, maybe there's a logical thing. Well, they found out 20 years later that these were all done by humans, and most of the ones, especially in England, were all done by the same person or a group of guys. They would go out late at night, and they go out there with strings and boards and push it down, and they got so they could do really elaborate details. You can see these details here with all these symbols around here. And then it just kind of went away. Here then they said, okay, this is how we do it. And so if you want to do a circle, you just put a pipe in the ground and then you just push them all down. That's why they're all in this circular pattern, because you're all working the same way as you push around from it. And with ropes you can measure out different distances and you can do all kinds of cool things. They even demonstrated how they do it. But some people still claim that there had to be aliens, even though there's people that have admitted to doing it both on our continent and in England. So most people now agree, yeah, this had nothing to do with aliens. Way back in the 70s too, there was something called the wow signal. And I'll talk about that in a little while. But back in the 70s, they started saying, hey, let's try to listen for alien signals. And we're going to listen to them on radio waves. So they have radio telescopes pointing out into space. And they would just listen. The radio telescopes would just point to the sky and just listen for signals. Well, back in the 70s, right here, you're like, what does this mean? All these are random signals coming from the telescope. This is what you expect to see, is what we call background noise. This is in a very special coding, which is a broad, loosely thing where the letters and numbers tell you the strength of the radio waves. This is essentially off the charts. So the radio signal's like this, and it goes bam, like this. And it does that for 72 seconds. And the radio astronomers, when they looked at that, he just wrote down wow on this signal, and so it became known as the wow signal. And nobody could explain it. But they didn't know where the telescope was pointing, so they kept looking back there, and so the next night they moved the telescope back to the spot. They did this for years. Nobody could ever get this signal again. And so they're wondering, well, what was this signal? And this is the way it looks. You see it lasted for about this long, for about 60, 72 seconds here. There was this really big signal. This is the normal background noise you see right here. Okay? So this was up. And this shows you the weird code that they were using. That's why the code looks so weird like this. But the signal was really large. Okay? And we can actually listen to the signal. So let me see here. I can get this to work.
To fly a rocket ship, you need to be an optimist. No astronaut.
All right, so here it is. This is the actual wow signal. We're going to listen to it. All right, that was it. It's mostly just kind of annoying. But, let me go back. The signal, again, was never found again. It was never found at that position in the sky. Now, just a few years ago, which was many 20, 30 years after this wow signal occurred, astronomers went back and said, well, what was this? There has to be a reason or an explanation for it. And when they did some research, they think what it really was a comet. There was a comet that happened to be coming through, and on that specific night where that telescope was pointed, it happened to point right at the comet. And a comet can do that because it doesn't give off radio signals per se, but it reflects radio signals off of the sun, and that would make that bizarre noise. Now, when they went to look at it the next few days, well, the comet had moved. That's why there wasn't anything there. And so that's the suspected origin of it now. But if you hear about the wow signal, that is the wow signal. Just last year, 2 years ago now, 2017, 2018, Oumuamua was a long, skinny asteroid, we think, we're not sure exactly what it was, that came into our solar system. And the interesting thing about it is this was the first, what we call extrasolar object to fly by our sun that we've ever found. This has probably happened before. But this came flying into our solar system right here, came flying in, and then went flying back out again. It had so much energy, it was not trapped in our solar system. And we had not found anything like that before that was not part of our solar system, or at least part of the Oort cloud. This was even way beyond the Oort cloud. So some people suspected, well, maybe this wasn't a random rock flying through space at all. Maybe this was a spaceship. And so we were watching it very intently to see if there's anything on it. First, they were watching to see if there was any kind of tail on it, because then it would be a comet. Well, they didn't find that, so they think it was an asteroid. But one of the interesting things is it did seem to change its position from what we would think for just gravity's, the sun's effect, it should be there, but we actually found it here. Now, there are other effects that can occur. You can also get uneven heating, or parts of the area that are evaporating onto the surface, and that can give it a boost, and that can explain this difference. But some people claim, no, that was aliens. So there's still question about what that exactly was. All right, that's it for bizarre situations.